Hello, today we're going to make these beaded flower bracelets. I have been inspired by my teenage daughter who has been stacking on bracelets lately. Her and all of her friends, beaded bracelets seem to be the thing. And I've noticed a lot of them in stores lately. And so I'm going to be making a few beaded bracelet tutorials with the hope that my daughter will join me and learn how to make them herself. And I hope you, if you're a teenager, I hope you love making them. If you're someone older, I hope you love making them. And the best part about beading is when you bead together. It's amazing the conversations I end up having with my children when we're sitting and making something together. I think it's really lovely, and I hope you will enjoy it. So let's get started with this project. Okay, so I am using Miyuki beads today, size 11 Miyuki round beads. It's not the delicas today. Round work much better for this project. I have three main colors, and then I have an accent color. I have a size 12 beading needle. I have Fireline and 6-pound weight. So this is a nice strong thread for a bracelet. You want it to be strong. And then I have my hardware. So I have a lobster claw clasp. I have a ring for that to hook onto. I have these two crimp beads, which I'm going to show you how to use, and then covers for the crimp beads. And I also have crimping pliers, which I'm going to show you how to use today. They're a really handy tool to have in your arsenal. So if you have this, you never knew how to use it, today you are going to learn how. If you don't have crimping pliers, don't worry. I'm going to show you what you could do as well. So let's get started with this project. So to begin, I have cut a little over 5 feet of my beading thread, and I've thread my needle. And the first thing I'm going to do is pick up this little crimp bead, crimp tube, crimp bead. I call it a crimp bead, but I think they're also called crimp tubes. Bring it down towards the end of your thread, and then pick up your little lobster claw hook there. And we're going to pull that down as well. Don't worry, we're going to have a better shot of it all in 1 second. Okay, so now I have my lobster claw, and I'm going to take my needle, and I just want to loop around here several times. I'm going to do it 3 or 4 times. We want this to be nice and strong. This is why it's important that we're using this sort of beading thread too. If this were like a regular sort of cotton thread, I wouldn't even suggest doing this because it would just break on you eventually. So we're just going to wrap this around like 3 or 4 times, make it really secure. And then I'm going to take my needle and go through the crimp tube. And the little tail I have, it's about a 3 to 4 inch tail. We don't need a huge tail, but it's good to have a tail to weave in at the end as well. And then I want to center that little crimp tube right above the lobster claw there. Then I'm going to grab my handy pliers, and I am going to use this little notched area of the plier. You want to get your crimp tube right in there, like so. And so you see the pointy side is going to squish down onto the other side. So I have that all set up to go. I want to pull my thread tight because I'm going to crimp this down. It's going to keep that thread from moving. So now I'm pressing, and you see it's going to form this little half moon shape like that. There you go. And then what you do is you want to fold it in the opposite way. So those two pieces sort of come together like that, and give it a good squeeze. Now, if you don't have crimp tubes or crimp pliers, you could just press it really flat. In most videos like this, you'll see they just press it flat, and that's perfectly fine. But I like to finish it this way. And so when you do fold it in half like that, then you could take this cute thing called a crimp cover. And I like to load it up in my pliers first. It's really finicky, so I suggest this is how you do it. You put it in your pliers first, and then you're going to put the crimp inside, and you're just going to give it a little squeeze. And we want that circle to come close so those two edges come together. So sort of squeeze it gently from either side until those two edges come together, and it forms a nice little circle. And how cute is that? You can't see the crimp tube at all. And now we are ready to begin beading. Okay, so I have my needle on the long working side of the thread, And I'm going to pick up my first beads of my first color. And that is going to be 6 beads. So I'm picking up 6 beads of this nice yellowy color here, mustard, I guess I would call it. And then I'm going to pull that all the way down to the end. And then I'm going to loop my needle around and come right back up through that just the first bead. So I'm just coming through that first bead like that. And I'm going to pull that tightly. And you want to slide that down. You don't want these gaps of thread. So slide that down. We'll have another opportunity to tighten it in a second. So don't be too worried if it's not staying there yet. And then we're going to pick up our center accent bead, which in my case is the gold. And we're going to bring it through the top bead. So if you see we have 6 beads, there'll be 2 on either side, 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. So we're going to come through the top one. It doesn't matter whether you come from the left or the right. Just going to bring your needle through that top bead. And then we're going to work that little bead into the center. You want to press it into the center of the flower. There you go. Help it get into place, and then give it a good tug, that thread. Tug it tight. Now, if you didn't have a strong thread, that tug could break your thread. So just make sure you're using the right materials here, and you will have success. Okay, so now we're going to pick up the sort of joining section. In between each flower, there's a joining section, and that's going to be 3 beads. So 1 accent bead, 1 of our second color, and then 1 more accent bead. And we're going to bring that needle through that top bead, through the opposite side of that top bead, and we end up with this, a little section of 3 beads. Now I want to bring my needle up to that top bead of the last color. So I'm going to turn it around because it's easier to come at it from the side my thread is coming out. And I'm just going to bring my needle up through that 1 accent bead and then through the top bead, like that. Now that purple bead is going to be the bottom of my next flower. So instead of adding 6 beads, I'm going to add 5 beads because we already have 1 bead. So I'm picking up 5 beads. The only time I add 6 is actually on that very first flower. So I have 5 beads now. I'm going to come around through the other side of that purple bead, like so. Pull that tightly. And then I'm going to grab my accent bead for the center of the flower. And we're going to come up to that top bead again. So 2 on each side, 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom. We're coming through the top. And pull that tightly. Hold it with your thumb there and really give it a good tug to get it to sit in place. And there you have it. Now let's look at the little joining section again. First, I'm going to give this a good tug. Make sure everyone is sitting where I want them to. And then I'm going to go on to this joining section is what I call it, or the transition section, should we call it? So it's going to be 1 accent, 1 of my next color, and then 1 accent again for a total of 3 beads. So 3 beads there. I'm coming around, going through that top bead. And then I'm going to turn my work over so I could just come back up to the top to come through that new color that I've just added. So I come through the 1 accent, and then I'm going to go through that light purple bead. And again, I have the first color of my next flower, the first bead of my next flower. So I only need to pick up 5 more beads. And then I'm going to come around like so and make a little loop. There we go. And then I'm just going to pick up that center bead again and come up through the top bead. If I could find it, there we go. Pull that through, push that center where you want it, and give it a little tug. And then we're going to do our transition section again. And I think by now you should be getting the hang of this. So 1 accent, 1 of my next color, 1 accent. And we're going to come right through there. So this is the pattern of the whole bracelet. I mean, this is it. It's easy, folks. Just take your time. You've totally got this. Mine ended up being about 21 flowers for the length I wanted it. So when you get to about 20, measure it on your wrist and see if you like how it's looking. And, then come back here and I will show you how to finish it off. But I'm not going to make you sit through, half an hour of just watching me add one flower at a time because that would be super boring. So I'm going to speed it up here. And when I come back, we're going to be magically at the end of the bracelet. So see you in a second. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to finish up my last flower. I hope you are at this point as well. I hope you didn't get too frustrated along the way. And if you did, just slow down the video. There's like a little button underneath. I'm not exactly sure how to do it on YouTube, but you can slow down the video or stop the video and just take your time. So I have 21 flowers here. I'm just double checking and making sure everything looks the way I want it to before I finish off this bracelet. And to do that, I have picked up my other crimp tube. I'm going to slide that down. And then I'm going to pick up my jump ring. Now, it's very important that your jump ring is not open. I should have said that before. It should be a closed jump ring because we don't want the thread to slide through the little tiny opening in the jump ring. So this is a closed jump ring. I am looping around it. I'm going to loop around it like 4 or 5 times like we did in the beginning with the lobster claw. And I would say this jump ring is probably a 6 or 7 millimeter jump ring. It's also quite a big lobster claw I'm using today too. I think that's probably, 9 to 10 millimeter lobster claw. I mean, any size is fine, really. Okay, so now I am just going to make a little knot there. Just a quick overhand knot. And it's not completely necessary, but I've just done that to sort of hold it in place. And then I'm going to come through that crimp tube and I've come through the first bead there as well. And I'm just going to weave this down into my work a little bit. And when you're weaving your thread back into the work, just follow the line of your original thread. So you don't want to sort of come up with new paths. You want to go through the original paths that your thread went through. And I like to, in this case, I probably had too much thread. But honestly, I like to go back through as much as I can. I think the more you can reinforce a bracelet, the better, because a bracelet does end up getting more wear and tear than any other jewelry we wear, actually. I mean, a ring, obviously, it would be the worst because we're constantly using our hands, but then a bracelet is definitely second. So I'm just going to weave this down here for a second. I'm going to speed it up so we get to the part with the crimp tube. Okay, so now I'm happy with how far back I've woven that. I feel like that's really woven in there. And you could just give that a clip because you have created enough tension. Just clip that thread. But we are going to deal with this crimp tube. So again, I am going to set that crimp tube in that little notch. Now be very careful here because you don't want to break the bead. You don't want the bead to get anywhere near. So I'm making sure I have space between my bead and that crimp tube. I've set it in that notch there. And I'm going to check it. Looking good there. And then I'm going to give it that good squeeze. And now we should have a bent little V-shaped crimp tube like so. And then I'm going to fold it in the opposite direction. There we go. Looking very cute. And you want to make sure you're squeezing these as hard as possible because the idea is to hold that thread in there, right? So squeeze, 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 squeeze. But don't break your bead. Your bead is glass, so keep your bead far, far away. So now I have loaded up my crimp cover. And I'm going to give that a little squeeze. And a squeeze from the other section. These are pretty delicate, so just give it gentle squeezes. Don't squish the thing. It's very easy to flatten them. So just gently nudge it to where you want it to be so that those little holes close up. And now I can clip my threads and my bracelet is finished. Except, I want to go back to that original thread tail, and I'm just going to clip that after I weave it in as well. So take care of all of your end threads, weave them in and clip them. And then we're just going to have a little chat before we say goodbye. Okay, so here I have clipped all of my threads. My bracelet is finished. I've made it so it's just the perfect size for my wrist. But if you wanted to make it longer, you could add more rings. Like you see, these really just perfectly fit my wrist. So, I said 21, but whatever size you want to make yours, depending on the size of your wrist, maybe smaller or bigger. Or like I said, you could always add extra rings. Like I'm showing you this other bracelet here, where if you add a few extra rings at the end, you could add them to that original jump ring just by twisting them open with open jump rings and make it longer. Or you could add a chain to the end to make it adjustable. It's always nice if you're actually going to sell your jewelry, it's good to have an adjustable length bracelet so that you can reach a wide variety of wrist sizes. So I do actually suggest that if you're selling your jewelry. And here we go. I've made these. I'm just going to, I am going to probably give whatever to my daughter that she wants. But also we have a little like summer fair at our school, and they have a little table where they just sell things to make extra money for the school. So these will get donated to that table. And I hope you have fun making these. I hope you'll make them with someone. I think it's really fun to do as a friendship bracelet where you make one for your friend makes one for you, and you exchange them. This is sort of like the gateway into beading from when I was a kid. Like, it was probably one of the first things I ever made that wasn't just stringing a string of beads. So I hope you love it, and I hope it gets you hooked on beading. Happy beading!